The third approach is then through modeling. And so we've got this idea, there's a map and a model that people have made, and so we've got the idea that it's a process, and so then the NLP approach is to model out the patterns and distinctions. How specifically are people doing this? How are they running this stress program and this stress kind of mind-body way of being in the world and reacting to what's happening in their situation? So very briefly, I think about modeling. Obviously, there's lots more to say about this, but a very brief approach to modeling in this situation would be to say that, for example, I might take two main approaches to this. One, the first one, would be Robert Dilts's logical levels. What's happening at these different kinds of levels? The level of environment, what's happening in the context, the level of behavior, what are people doing and saying, the level of capability, how are they thinking? This comes on later into how are they running their different senses and what's happening in the body and how are they thinking. What sort of beliefs are coming up? What sort of meaning is being made? How are people thinking about themselves at identity level, as a person, as their role? And how are people experiencing their connection to the bigger world, the bigger living system, their own personal connection to their sense of purpose and contribution and meaning in the world? So I think that's one model that I would use to start to find out what's really happening here with this person. The second model would be this VAK model, where we're finding out what kinds of pictures are people making, what sorts of dialogue are they saying to themselves and in what way, and how are they using their bodies, what kinds of emotions are they experiencing. So the modeling, just again a very quick into how you might model with NLP. We're getting really interested in how are people doing this. Let me say just a few things about what might be going on, because I think that's always interesting. So when people are stressed or stressing themselves, often in the visual field, you can get multiple images kind of popping up. People are unable to know like what to focus on. Or sometimes people feel very overwhelmed. I mean, a classic when people say they're overwhelmed is they have one huge picture and it's tipping towards them. So there's literally, when people say, I've got no space to think, they've literally got no space to think. And we can help them just temporarily at least move that picture away and be able to think and have a bit of free space to process other types of thoughts. Sometimes people can't even see their pictures, they're unclear, or everything's gone dark and grey inside, or there's a lot of different things that are happening in the visual system. What is often missing is this ability to be able to focus more clearly and cleanly, on some kind of worthwhile, meaningful, motivating outcome type content. So in other words, the content of often of these pictures are problem type, worrying type content. So there's no outcome orientation, there's no pictures of how things could be or what people really want instead. But also there's no ability to move around and take in data and learning and feedback from the world. People are often locked inside their own world of visual imagery. So that's just a few clues I'm throwing out, which you could get interested in and curious about. I think in the auditory system, this is where the most work has been done in terms of modern evidence-based approaches to working with stress, is how people are talking to themselves. And their beliefs are coming up, beliefs are becoming self-fulfilling prophecies, people are only filtering for evidences and data, confirmation bias that allows them to continue to be like that. And so the meta model and other approaches that we have in NLP, the sleight of mouth program patterns, the meta model questions, are all inviting people to challenge and reorganize those filters in order to bring in new learnings, new feedback, new data and experience. People who are being stressed have cut themselves off from certain kinds of experiences, and then they're stabilizing that in language, and that language is what's going on in the system that they're paying attention to a lot of the time. And one of the problems is with our internal dialogue that seems so subjectively real, it feels like that is our reality. And we tend to believe what we're saying to ourselves. And of course, that's where we often need that help from other people to help challenge and transform the way that we're talking to ourselves. I think also a lot of people don't realize, and again this is a classic NLP, that it is your voice. It is your voice. Is there a way that you can make that voice a friend? Can you change the tone? Can it become more kind and gentle? Can it become your greatest supporter? What is the purpose? What is the positive intention of that voice for you? Often it is to motivate you. Often it is to make sure you're not disappointed and hurt again. So I think those are very interesting places to explore in the pictures, in the voice, and of course then in the body, to be able to find out what's going on in the body. Is there this neuromuscular lockdown, tension, excessive muscular holding in the body? Breathing patterns are all distorted and disturbed. People are holding their breath, etc., etc. There's often either an overly slowing down and fatiguing of the way people are functioning, or there's a heightened speeding up that you can hear with people. So I think that ability to help people to pause, to slow down, to breathe, to be able to recenter themselves, all these things are very, very helpful. So often in modelling as well, we're looking at a baseline, and this is a very helpful thing for the person as well, is to help them access and re-access when has it been that they've felt resilient, capable, that the world is full of potential and opportunities for them. Can they find an example in the past? If they can't find one in the past, can they find one in the future? For their future selves, when they no longer have and are experiencing these problems and this situation, this stress? Or can you help them find a way of feeling pretty okay in the present? Because this can act as a reference point in a modelling exercise, which in NLP we call mapping across. How can we learn from our own best selves? How can we come back to a state of feeling more grounded and balanced and centered and breathing and alive and awake and present and ready for life? And how can we compare it with our more stressed, the neuromuscular lock, the pictures that aren't working for us, the internal dialogue that's ragging and raging away at us on the inside that we're starting to believe is the truth of life? How can we escape from that and remember what things can be like for us, and to reconnect us with our resources? Because that's basically that absolute essential foundational thing that we can help ourselves and each other with, to reconnect with our own resources, to find that we are the biggest resource that we need when we're really here and present and able to think clearly and use our capabilities well. That's really all we need. Then these problems in our lives, at least we can look at them. At least we can start to process them. We can start to come up with good decisions and choices, see some things differently, set different types of filters on our experience. So that's really quite a lot of things to say about modelling, although of course there's so much more. But this idea of modelling out something, what's really happening, how is it happening, how are people organising themselves such that they're having this experience, and then being able to compare with what's that like when you're at your very best, and being able to map across the aspects of it. Supposing you take this state of relaxed readiness over here, supposing you take this open, spacious ability to look around over here, supposing you soften and quieten down the internal dialogue, what kinds of difference does that make? We're always looking for what's a difference that makes a difference. What's a difference that makes a difference? And how can you use self-modeling what you already know deeply, profoundly in your system, that you are capable to be like? How can you use that as one of your main resources for growth and evolution? And this would, of course, lead us into this whole area, which is so interesting right now, this area called post-traumatic growth, where people are looking to find out how do people move on from difficult circumstances. How can you use even the worst thing that has happened to be a source of strength and renewal for you in some way? So these are just clues at what's out there, but also what I'm really interested in exploring in our work and in our programs. So that was the third thing, the modeling approach, and it leads us, of course, into the mindfulness approach. There's lots and lots of research that you can find pretty much everywhere that now utterly validates the idea that setting your state to be present and centered and breathing and free is the best way to promote best performance and to optimize your best kinds of thinking and behavioral choices. We have all Olympic athletes know this, all performers and artists know this. This is a non-controversial aspect of self-development and self-evolution, I think, now. And of course, in NLP, it's one of the foundations of our practice too, that working with state, being able to find these positive, resilient, resourceful states, being able to strengthen them, being able to find our way back home to them more and more easily, being able to elaborate these states across many different kinds of contexts, and learning over a lifetime. So this is the longer term sense of working with building resourcefulness in ourselves to have these kinds of practices that are more a daily, not a one-off thing, but more of a kind of daily, ongoing way of strengthening our ability to withstand life's difficulties, to have this kind of resilience. So that's why I call it a modeling and a mindfulness approach. On the one hand, we're sort of exploring, well, what's happening? What can be done? Where are the differences that might make the difference? The mindfulness approach to go, let's have a practice of strengthening our ability to maintain resourcefulness even in difficult times of stress and anxiety, which I would say we're in at the moment. So that's my fourth thing.